Hello, everyone. Nick Skillicorn here, host of the Idea to Value podcast, coming at you for the first time live. It's 2021, and I've resolved to do a lot more videos this year. And one of the best ways to do that is to record them live. It just means that you get into the flow more easily, and I can do them a lot more frequently. So I wanted to kick off this first video of the year by talking about one of the big pieces of news that's come out of America recently. And that is that Donald Trump has been banned from Twitter. Not only that, he's been banned from Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, and even Reddit, one of the most open places on the internet, due to these technology platforms finally being fed up with the type of messaging he was spreading around the world, claiming that it had reached the level where it was really palpably leading to violence in the streets, and therefore they had to remove his access. Now, this is ironic because, especially for Twitter, Donald Trump was one of the most popular people on their platform. You can probably suggest that a lot of their growth recently was due to the amount of publicity tweets were getting because they were quoting Donald Trump's tweets so frequently. Now, that's not to say that the quality of the tweets were good at all. Not to say that the messaging behind them was good at all either. But these were reaching hundreds of millions of people around the world, which was very good for Twitter. It was therefore in their interests to keep this engagement as high as possible. But at some point, they decided as a company, this is not what we want to stand for. And after initially revoking his access for 12 hours, Donald Trump immediately then went on and spread more conspiracy theories, and Twitter said, look, enough is enough. You are now permanently banned from this platform. Now, this leads to the question of what does this mean for individuals and companies who are starting out in business or their own creative endeavors? And I'd like to suggest to you one of the most important things to consider is having control of your own platforms and diversifying who sees what on what platform. You see, there's a lot of tools out there nowadays which claim to make it as easy as possible to produce your new product or to reach a new group of people or to add functionality to your product, or even some service providers who will actually build your product or service for you. But there's a lot of danger in this. You see, if you give up too much control over your product or service to someone else, then you're at the whim of that individual or company, whether or not they change the product or service to see whether or not this impacts you. And I'd like to give you a couple of examples. The first is from the realm of social media. What's really impacted the story around Donald Trump today. Facebook, when it first launched, had what was called extremely good organic reach for individuals who set up pages. These pages are either for organizations or for primarily companies. And Facebook would promote these pages and tell people, get as many fans on these pages as possible, because that way, every time you send out a piece of content, they will see it. And companies were scrambling to get as many followers as possible, thinking that this was going to be the most effective viral way to get content out there. Until, of course, Facebook showed what really was behind the desire to build up these followers and pages, which is that they could then control how often and how sort of widespread the messages that any page or individual put out there were actually seen by the people who were following these pages. What's called the organic reach of these pages. Let's say when this feature first began, if you had 100,000 people who were following you and you put out a new piece of content, if these people were online when the content was posted, it was very likely that they would see it. But then Facebook decreased the organic reach so that even if people were live when this content was being produced, only a fraction of them all of a sudden were able to see it. And there was a good business reason for this. Facebook could then tell these companies, look, if you want to get your message in front of more of your followers, you can pay us. You can pay us to boost your posts. And they therefore controlled not only who could see these posts, they had the algorithms to determine what was the most effective way to get in front of the right type of people, so that companies would become reliant on paying them to get their message in front of as many people as they could, whereas beforehand they were expecting it to be for free. So that's one example of a platform holder having control over a company and therefore forcing them to change the way they do business. I've actually got an example from my own business as well. My website used to use a comment system by one of the largest and most popular comment plugins for my WordPress system called Disqus. Now, Disqus is a very elaborate comment system. You can log in, you can have very long trails of nested comments. But then this company, Disqus, tried to think of new and more effective ways to make money. And they thought, well, advertising is obviously one of the best ways to do that. And they claimed, oh, if you add ads to your comments, then you'll get a share of the ad revenue. But this was really not appealing to me. I said, no, I do not want ads here. Until, of course, I logged into my website a couple of weeks later and realized that Disqus had just turned on this functionality because they decided so. They had started showing ads for companies I did not support on my website without my consent. And I'm sure they would have said, oh, look at these new terms and conditions. Somewhere in there would be the fact that these are going to now be enabled without your knowledge. So my response was immediately, I disabled this plugin. And I had the ability to do that because I owned my platform. I owned the WordPress system that my website was built on. So I had the ability, if some other technology company was doing something I didn't like, to change my mind and to very, very quickly be able to react to get the design and style and messaging of my product and service back into the way that I wanted it. But not all companies are able to do that, especially when they become dependent on a service provider. There's a lot of companies out there which will claim to provide the easiest, simplest, fastest way to develop a product service, and especially anything technological like a website. Examples like Wix.com or Squarespace.com are probably the two best known examples of this. And yes, it might be simple to build a website in their system, especially for someone who's not very tech savvy. But once your content is in their system, you become dependent on their system, on their pricing model, and on them continuing to promise what you expected them to promise. It then becomes very, very hard to get out of that system if you ever need to. So let's say Wix or Squarespace decided to completely change their business model and to encourage advertising on people's websites. They would be able to do that theoretically. They might lose a lot of customers, but they have the power to change your product because you're dependent on them. And this is why it's so important to have diversification in the ways that not only your products are built, but also the ways that you interact with your target customers. It might be good for you to use social media networks for certain ways to communicate. But if you were one of these companies that spent a huge amount of time and money building up hundreds of thousands of Facebook followers, thinking that was going to be a free way to access these customers for the future, then it quickly transpired that that was not the case. You would then have to change your business model and pay to access these customers that you previously thought were free. So what can you do about it? Well, it's very important to ask yourself this question when you're first starting any new business venture, any new idea within a business, and especially any creative endeavor, where you ask yourself, what do I want to be the basis of my product, especially from a technology perspective, from a development perspective, and from a communications perspective? To what degree am I willing to be dependent on the best service for any part of my business? If you put all of your eggs in one basket and say, I am a YouTuber and all I do is produce YouTube videos. A lot of YouTube creators have been burned recently by changes in the algorithm to either display more of one certain type of content or less of one certain type of content. And then they have to completely change their business model, and a lot of the content they previously produced might not even be visible to people anymore. So it might be a good idea to have YouTube as part of your portfolio of technology, but not to be completely dependent on it. Just like you shouldn't be dependent on Facebook. You shouldn't be dependent on Twitter, just like in this case, Donald Trump with his nearly 100 million followers on Twitter. That's all gone now. He has lost that platform. And so it's not only technology platforms you can consider as well. Are you dependent on a service provider, on a development company, on a marketing or branding agency, or even on one specific person within your company? What would happen if these companies or individuals would change their mind? How would you react? How would you be able to continue having the business that you have now, working in the way that you are now, and being able to expand it and grow in the future as well? These are all very, very important questions to ask yourself, not only when starting any innovation or creative project, but also when looking at your existing business as well. So I hope that's given you some food for thought. Don't end up like Donald Trump. Don't end up dependent on any one platform. If you're dependent, if you have all your eggs in one basket, if the basket falls, they're going to break. So I hope that's given you some things to think about. This has obviously been a bit of an experiment for me with the new live video format. But let me know what you think. Let me know, send me a comment, react to the video on whatever platform you saw it. And especially if you like the message, then please share it. Please share it with whoever you think could benefit from it. That really helps the algorithms on all the platforms as well. And it helps me understand what type of videos around innovation and creativity you find interesting as well. With that being said, that's all for today, and I look forward to speaking again with you soon. Bye-bye.